What draws someone in to want to read your novel? What makes your novel lovable? What makes someone want to read your novel again and again? And I don't mean just for a few weeks or a few years. I mean a book that stands the test of time, where people are reading it hundreds of years from now, like the literary classics. We're going to deal with that question and we're going to answer them. And we're starting right now. It's the golden rule to being a successful writer. Well, here it is. It's about treating your reader as though they're smart and intelligent, respecting your reader. Don't treat them like idiots. Don't look down upon them. Don't talk down to them. The more respect you show your reader, the more they're going to want to read your book over and over again. Why? Because when someone reads a book, they put themselves into it. The reader becomes the protagonist. How many times have you read a book where you picture yourself in the novel? You are the lead character. If the lead character is in danger, you feel as though you're in danger. This is what we do as people. We live through the novel that we're reading. As a writer, you can use this to your advantage. Always remember, whenever you're writing a novel, the person reading it becomes that character. Take a look at Agatha Christie. When she writes a mystery novel, she knows that whoever is reading is going to put themselves into that novel. Everybody in that novel is smart and intelligent and clever and witty. The detective investigating the crime is smart. No one acts like an idiot. That is why when you read an Agatha Christie novel, you love it because you put yourself into it. When you read Sherlock Holmes, let's face it, you are Sherlock Holmes. You're the one investigating the crime. You're not reading about Sherlock Holmes, you are Sherlock Holmes. And when Sherlock Holmes acts intelligent and smart and witty and he figures things out, it's you who's figuring out the crime, finding the clues. It's you who's in the novel. If Sherlock Holmes acted dumb and acted silly, you wouldn't want to read that, because if you put yourself in the novel and Sherlock Holmes is acting dumb, it makes you feel dumb. Nobody wants that when reading a novel. They want to feel smart. And as a writer, always remember to make everybody in your novel very smart. And that will make the reader want to read on. Don't have anybody acting dumb. Think about when you watch a movie, where at the beginning of the movie, they give a clue saying something like, the killer wears red shoes. And then maybe 40 minutes later, somebody walks into a room wearing red shoes. And the lead character has that voiceover where you can literally hear someone saying, the killer wears red shoes. It makes the audience feel dumb. Why would the director put that in there? Why would they have the protagonist literally remembering what was said earlier in the movie? The director put that in there because they feel as though the audience may not be smart enough to remember. But the fact is, you do. If you're told a clue at the beginning of the movie, and you see something later in the movie that reminds you, you don't literally need to be reminded by having the character remembering. You figured it out. When somebody walks into a room wearing red shoes, you're going to look and say, hey, that's the killer. Because we were told earlier that the killer wears red shoes. You don't literally need to be reminded. When you are reminded of something so blatant like that, you feel insulted. You feel like, did the director really need to remind me of something that I remembered for myself? Don't do this to your audience. If you give a clue at the beginning, the person reading your book, they're going to remember it. You literally don't have to have a flashback to something that happened 4 or 5 pages ago. Because as a writer, you feel as though the person reading your book is too dumb to remember something. Well, no, they will remember. You don't have to slap them in the face and saying, you're dumb. I have to remind you of something. In fact, do the opposite. Respect your reader. If you put a clue at the beginning saying that the killer wears red shoes, and 4 or 5 chapters later, somebody walks in a room wearing red shoes, the reader's going to remember that and have your protagonist react, not have to be reminded. Have your protagonist react because the reader is the protagonist. They're going to react to what they see. If they see someone wearing red shoes, they're going to respond as though that's the killer. They don't need reminding. There is a certain phrase that is used in movies a lot that profoundly makes the audience feel insulted. What is that phrase? Well, I'll get back to it in 1 second, so stick around. You're going to want to know it because you don't want to be putting it into your novels. Now let's look at Mario Puzo's The Godfather novel. Absolutely amazing from start to finish. What is it that makes it so amazing? One of the big things is Mario Puzo respected you as the reader. Information was given about the different families and the backstabbing, the lying, who to trust, who not to trust. But the information was just given quickly. For you, the reader, had to keep up, pay attention, remember who's who. You felt like you were in the family. You felt like you were in the mafia, caught up in that mafia war. And that's what made you want to turn the page. You weren't insulted by having reminders, characters' names in brackets, reminding you who's who and what happened in the past. You don't want that. You would feel tremendously insulted if that happened. The information is given quickly, and you have to keep up. The same thing happened in Thomas Harris' Silence of the Lambs. This was a novel that moved at a very fast pace with a lot of information. At no point did you feel as though you were being talked down to, with information being given where two people are talking, where information is being given to the reader, where you know that the writer put stuff in there because they're talking to you. You don't want that. You don't want to be talked down to. It's like when you watch the movie Wall Street. Could they have had the characters talking to each other about how to make money in the stock market? They could have, but you would have known darn well that they're saying that to each other because they're talking to you, the audience, because they feel as though you're dumb. Well, Oliver Stone, when he made the movie Wall Street, he didn't have any of the characters talking to each other about what they already know. They talked in that money lingo where you had to pay attention. You had to keep up because you were in that movie. That movie moved at a fast pace, and you had to keep up with the actors, with the information being given. You were not talked down to. You were not insulted. And that is what made you respect the movie, because the movie respected you. As a writer, you don't want to talk down to your reader by putting information in which it's basically clear that you, the writer, are talking to the reader, giving them information to catch up. You insult the reader when you do this. And chances are you've read books where this has happened. And you can't help but feel insulted, saying that the writer is clearly talking to me. As a writer, have your characters talk to each other and let the reader catch up, because that's what the reader wants to do. They want to figure things out for themselves. Don't give your reader 2 plus 2 and tell them that it's 4. Give them 2 plus 2 and let the reader figure out 4 for themselves. The more the reader can guess and figure out the mystery, the more they will respect your novel. But if you flat out tell your reader, this is 2 plus 2 and this is the 4, the reader feels insulted. They won't want to read on. Now I want to talk about that phrase that I mentioned earlier, the one that you should never have in your novel. And what is that phrase? It's the phrase, as you know, where two people are talking to one another and one of them turns to the other and says, as you know, and then proceeds to tell them information that they already know. Well, why would you do this? Why would one person turn to someone else and say, as you know, and then proceed to give them a whole bunch of information that they already know? Have you ever done that in life? Has anyone ever turned to you and say, as you know, and then tell you something you already know. You would look at them and say, why are you telling me this? I already know. In fact, you know I know because you started the sentence with, as you know. So why does this happen in books and movies? It happens because the writer is talking to the reader and having two people share information that they already know to allow the reader to understand what's happening. But in fact, what you do is you insult the reader by having two people talk to one another, sharing information they already know. What you need to do as a writer is put that information into the book gradually so the reader can figure it out for themselves. You give the reader 2 plus 2, and you let the reader understand the 4. They can figure it out for themselves. When you apply this technique, you make the reader feel intelligent. And by that, they will want to keep reading the rest of the book and other books. Because if you've written other books, they're going to want to read that and feel just as intelligent. And this benefits you as a writer. But if you insult your reader, they're not going to want to read anything else you've written because you make them feel dumb. You feel like you're talking down to them. Try to avoid characters repeating each other's statements, where one character says, we have to run to the car, to the car. Yes, we need to get to the car right away. Yes, I agree with you. We need to run to the car right away. Why is that? Why would you do that as a writer? Don't fill your books with information where they just repeat each other's dialogue back and forth to each other. In fact, try to avoid having questions in your book. Make everything statements. It makes the reader feel intelligent. Have you ever watched a horror movie where someone yells, "What's happening?" It makes the movie look silly. The more you have your characters act intelligent, the more the reader will respect the character because we put ourselves into the novel. If you think that advice that I just gave you was good advice, well, you want to be sure to check out my other blog on how to master the book publishing business, on how you can get your dream novel. Now, here is the video right here. You can click on it and watch it right away. And be sure to check out my website. I'll leave a link in the description below where you can visit my site and get a ton of information on more blogs that can help you become the greatest writer you can be. Because I want to help you make your dreams become a reality. I want to read your book.